Great. So we are being recorded for those of you that want to refer back to it, and Dalal, just in case our participants who are now above 20 haven't heard it, we will please state your questions in the chat, and Dalal will take care that we keep coming back to you for any clarifications that you require, but we'll allow you to unmute yourself towards after the session is done for any discussions or sharing that you want to do at your end. And our librarians are here, and I'm very, very happy. And we have a great team of librarians here as well, and they're also a part of this session. So over to you, Dalal, without much ado, and I'll keep in touch along the way, right?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Roxana, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to deliver this session on open educational resources. I must acknowledge that we at the American University of Beirut have received funding last year to attend an institute on open educational resources from Amical. So we are a team of librarians, instructional designers, and faculty members who are working on an initiative at AUB, a one-year-old initiative at AUB. But the expertise we have subject librarians who are very experts on the topic, and also instructional designers. So the initiative is still new at AUB, but the expertise is there. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about what open educational resources are and what could be done with open educational resources, why they are important. So what are open educational resources? What Creative Commons licenses are? Why open educational resources are important? How to evaluate open educational resources, and where to get support from. So we are living in a pivotal moment in history, as UNESCO describes it. So the COVID-19 has resulted in a paradigm shift on how learners of all ages can access learning. So the pandemic has disrupted learning and knowledge sharing worldwide. It has affected 1.5 billion learners in 191 countries, as UNESCO reported around the world. In this unprecedented context, open educational resources represent a crucial means to support the continuation of learning in both formal and informal settings. So this is meaningful to all of us as individuals, as family members, as community members, and of course as educators. So there's a call for action for educators. UNESCO states in one of the calls for action related to open education and open educational resources. So UNESCO calls on the global community to support the use of open educational resources for sharing learning and knowledge openly worldwide, with a view to building more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient knowledge society. So before we start our presentation, I would like to ask you to go to the first. We have some questions, and I would like you to participate in answering those questions. This is useful both for me and for the college, for the Christian College, I think. So if you can please go to poll.com/Dalal Rahme 469 and participate in the first question. How much do you know about open educational resources? This is the first question. And let me start Okay. Start the presentation. Can you all see the question?
I have opened it, but I'm not able to see the question.
Okay, so Anish has sent the link in the chat. If you just press on the link. And you'll have the first question in front of you. How much do you know about open educational resources?
Is there just one question?
Yes, this is the first question.
Can you please show a thumbs up if you have responded to the question?
So you have to enter your name first, and then choose one of the answers. Did you go to polev.com/Dalal Rahme 469? Then you'll get a screen where you can add your name, and then move on to. Then you'll see. Yeah, okay, thank you. Some people have started. Answering the questions. So I want to try to share the answers as well.
There are a few folks in the chat box who were saying that, so they have been responding to the question.
Okay, so can you see my screen? So we have some answers here.
Your screen just says poll question 1, please go to the link. How much do you know about OER?
Yeah. I wait for a few minutes. We have some answers. But if someone else wants to participate, and please stay on the page. I mean, when you participate, do not close the page because we have more questions coming throughout the presentation. So 27% of the audience have never heard about the topic. So this is good. I'll be introducing some new concepts today. 53% have heard about open educational resources, but never used them. Okay. And we have 20% of the participants who have some experience in using open educational resources. And then we have no experts. That's okay. Okay, so I will move on. Going back to the presentation. So am I on the presentation again?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So what are open educational resources? We're going to define open educational resources. So we might be speaking, we might have a common ground of what they are. So open educational resources, again, this is a definition by UNESCO. There are several definitions. They're all almost the same. So I chose UNESCO's definition for today. They are teaching, learning, and research material that are in any medium, digital or otherwise, that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license. So either in the public domain, material, teaching material, and research material, either in the public domain or under an open license. And we're going to see what open licenses are and mean, that permit no-cost access, use, adaptation, and redistribution by others with no limited or with no or limited restrictions. So we have two conditions for a research material, for materials online to be classified as open educational. They should be either in the public domain or have an open flexible license. And here we speak all, so open education resources can come in different types and formats. So you can see them as a full courses online, as modules, online chapters for specific courses online, as images. You can find sometimes assessments, assignments for courses, or assessments and tests for specific courses, learning objects, textbooks, lessons. They can come in different types, such as videos and audios, etc. So you can find them in different types and formats. And here we also speak about the 5 R's, the 5 activities related to open educational resources, keeping in mind that those activities all have to have open licenses. So whenever we're speaking about open educational resources, we're speaking about resources that you can retain, make a copy of, own a copy of this resource, reuse in a wide range of ways, redistribute those copies, share them, or share an edited copy of them with your students or with other colleagues. Remix them, like take a resource and do something with it, combine it with another resource, add to it whatever you want to add, and revise the resources, adapt them, justify them, alter them, etc. So these are the 5 activities that you can do with open educational resources. And to do all of those activities, you have to have an open license, a license which would allow you to do that. And here I want to stop to distinguish between open access and open education. And in open educational resources, people think that open access is the same as open educational resources. Well, there's a difference. Open access, when you have a publication or a book or an image in open access, it means that this material is accessible by all, okay? But it depends on the license appended to it. And if the license permits to retain it, reuse it, redistribute it, remix it, or revise it, it means that it is an open educational resource. If not, if you can only access it and take information from it, then it's open access only. It's not an educational resource. So here I want to talk a little bit about open licenses. When we speak about open licenses, we are talking about Creative Commons licenses in general. And here again, I want to stop and ask you to participate. I want to move to the next question in the poll. And I want to ask you, how much do you know about open education, about Creative Commons licenses? Are you familiar with Creative Commons licenses? Yes or no? Great. So, okay. That's good. So we have around a 50-50. Some of you know what Creative Commons licenses are and some of you don't. So those who know what Creative Commons licenses are, please bear with us. And we're going to give a brief a definition about, or talk a little bit more about about Creative Commons licenses. So Creative Commons licenses are off-the-shelf licenses available for you to choose from and append to your content, the content you're posting online. At the same time, whenever you are choosing or looking at some content available online, you have to look at the license under which the content is made accessible in order to know how you can use this content. So these are the major, the 5 licenses, the 4 licenses provided by Creative Commons. So whenever you see this sign, this means that you need to give attribution to the content you're using. The CCNC, and this sign is the symbol is for non-commercial purposes. So you can use whatever you're viewing or checking or accessing online, but for non-commercial purposes. When you see the ND or the equal sign, it means that the object under this license, you cannot derive from it. You can use it as is, but you cannot create something else out of it. And we're going to see that this type of license is not for open educational resources. The CCSA, the 4th license, is the share alike license. And whenever you see this license appended to an object online, it means that you can use this, this object or this material, but whenever you're using it, you have to, if you're publishing out of it, for example, you have to use the same license appended to the object you've used. So you're sharing whatever you want to share, as the previous also you took from has shared the license. So if the person has an NCSA, for example, license, you have to also put your work under NCSA, non-commercial sharing. You can mix between those licenses. So you can have a CC-BY attribution. Whenever you're using those licenses to append them to your own work, you can state that you want a license which give you attribution and share alike, or give you attribution with no derivatives, or attribution and non-commercial purposes, or attribution non-commercial purposes, share alike, or the 4th type, which is the attribution non-commercial non-derivatives. So you can use those licenses for your own work, but also whenever you see them online, you must be able to search for them online to see if the resource or material is an open educational resources or not, or how you can use whatever you're accessing online. So for open educational resources, the most free of them, the most flexible of them are for open educational resources, and the least free with restrictions like non-commercial and non-derivative are the licenses which are not used for open educational resources. So there's one license which I didn't mention, it's the public domain license. It's the CC0 license, the first one on the screen. So if you see a public domain license on the object you're using, then it's an open educational resource. If you see BY or BYSA or BYNC commercial or attribution non-commercial share alike, those licenses are for open educational resources. Okay, so whenever you're using a resource online, it has to have one of the 5 first licenses. If it has one of the 2 last licenses, then it's not an open educational resource, which means that you cannot adapt, remix it, and reuse it for your own purposes and for your own course. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so at this point, do we have any questions?
No, not as of yet.
Okay, great. So I proceed. Why open educational resources are important? It's worth to mention that open educational resources are under open educational practices. So open education is not only about resources. The use of open educational resources enables us to expand our practices in ways that go far beyond educational content, and they facilitate new practices in teaching and learning. So why open for teaching and learning? There are potential benefits of open educational resources in mainly 3 areas and for 3 reasons, as Catherine Cronin described them in one of her presentations. And those are access, equity, and pedagogy. So first, for access, there was a sudden move to online teaching and learning. So teachers who had not taught online before had to learn how to create new material to post them online. While actually they did not have to do that, because there are several teaching materials available online to support them in creating their courses. They could adopt from them, remix, reuse them, and they did not have to reproduce new materials. In terms of students, there's evidence that students who are in educational situations where educators are using open educational resources don't have challenges, don't face challenges other students face when the educators are not using open educational resources. So there are educational disadvantages on students who cannot buy their textbooks. So where open educational resources or open textbooks are used, we can enable access by all for most students. So there is an advantage for students when teachers are using open educational resources. Now, everyone can access them. That is true, but unless someone doesn't have an internet connection and the knowledge required to access open educational resources. So that is true under a condition. And here we move to equity. So whenever we speak about equity, we speak about equity in having access to resources as well. But many students are experiencing financial hardships, especially, for example, for us in Lebanon, due to this bad economic situation we are currently facing. So we see that students are facing hardships in terms of acquiring expensive textbooks for their courses. So whenever people or educators are using OER, open educational resources, this will reduce costs for students. Also, OER are persistently available for students, not just during the time they are students, but even before they become students and after taking a course. So when students are forced to take breaks in their studies, those open educational materials are available for them all the time. So we can also address equity and inclusion in different important ways. Some of the textbooks we use, whether are open or not, are not inclusive in terms of gender, race, geography, culture. So whenever you're using a textbook which is written for a certain Western audience, for example, it does not address your own culture. So you have examples from another culture, from another geographical spaces, etc. So the fact that we can adapt, remix, and edit those open educational resources for our particular context, for our particular students, means that we can represent marginalized identity communities and include perspectives that are missing and make the educational resources more effective for learners. And the fourth point is that we are supporting the SDG number 4 on quality education. Open educational resources help in ensuring inclusive and quality education for all and promote long life learning. So this is for equity. As for pedagogy, in terms of pedagogy, adopting and using open educational resources in context. This is when the work can be done in terms of, for example, translating materials from one language to another. This is one way of adapting and reusing the resource. For example, in our region, we have shortage in Arabic resources. So open educational, when using open educational resources, this would allow us to translate whatever is available in open educational resources online for us in other languages like English, and adapt it to our own, in our own context and in our own language. For example, for you, I think the Urdu and other languages. Also, if you have lack in some materials in specific languages you need, then you can use open educational resources in other languages and translate them and adopt them in your course. Students become also co-creators of open educational resources. So they can contribute to creating course materials, examples, they can edit or create Wikipedia articles and other kind of contents. And this leads to making the assessment of teaching and learning more authentic. As students can contribute to also the public knowledge and also educators. This practice will develop digital literacies for both the students and the educators and will diversify the curriculum. So through adding missing content maybe and contextual perspectives, we can engage with cultural heritage collections, for example, museums and libraries around the world who are making their collections publicly accessible to everyone. You can use those collections in your courses and in this way diversify the curriculum. And this will also lead to local and global collaborations. So whenever someone is using your open educational resource, they might get in touch with you, and this will open a door for collaboration with you. Also, you can collaborate with others whenever you're using someone else's open educational resource and enhancing it and working on it and delivering it in another form. This would create collaborations among both students and faculty members, educators around the world and locally. So in the literature, we have evidence that open educational resources are beneficial, and whenever people are using them or faculties and colleges are using them, they have witnessed less drop from the courses and registering to more courses. There's also evidence that they improved student performance. Students have done the same or sometimes better when instructors have been using open educational resources. And of course, in terms of saving open educational resources, whenever they're fully adopted in a course, they save a lot of money on students. Now, we are going to go to poll question number 3. So if you please go again to the poll, and for question number 3 is the following. Will you, now that you learned a little bit about open educational resources, will you be willing to adopt open educational resources in the near future for your course? Is it 100% yes? That's great. So Roxana and the librarians, you have a lot to do. Okay. Okay, so everyone says yes, that's great. Okay, back to the presentation. What makes a good OER, open educational resource? So here we want to learn more about how to evaluate open educational resources. First, being findable. So if an open educational resource is findable and accessible online, maybe it has different locations, it's available through different platforms. This is something good. If it's clearly described, so whatever resource you are accessing has to be clearly described in terms of, for example, who the author is, what are the educational goals from it, a description about it, like what is it about, from under which topics and courses it can be used, etc. So if it's clearly described, it's a good open educational resource. If it's clearly licensed, normally the licenses used are the Creative Commons licenses. So if you have a clear license on whatever you're using, then it's a good open educational resources. Because sometimes we find resources online, but we cannot find the license appended to those resources. So we don't really know how we can use them. So if it has a clear license, then it's a good open educational resource. If it is from a reputable source, and we're going to see in the next slide some of the reputable platforms offering open educational resources. If it's easy to modify, like for example, sometimes you have some presentations, for example, in published online as open educational resources, but they are in a type which you cannot modify. You can take them and use them as is, for example, PDF formats. While if you share a presentation in a PDF format, then people can take it and edit it and remix it and use it, etc. This is one simple example. Okay, if it's easy to modify, of course, if the license permits, and if it is an open educational resource, then the license should permit a modification. If it's freestanding, that is, it does not assume knowledge of other resources. And if it's being recommended by peers. Of course, whenever you see an open educational resource provided by a well-known author in your own field, then it is also reliable. Now we are going to go back to poll question number 4. And I want to learn from you. Let's think a little bit, pause for a second and think a little bit about, since you all agree on using open educational resources in the near future. I want you to think a little bit about what would be your main challenge or barrier to adopt open educational resources. So what kind of barriers or challenges do you think you would face? This is a free text question, so yeah, so you have to add your own words. There is no multiple and multiple choice answers. So I'll give a few more seconds. Answers are coming in. Okay, so we have the biggest words are technology, resources, using content, rights. Okay, issues. Are there any specific issues, or just in general? What kind of issues can you think of? Okay, fair enough. So I think we can move now to the presentation back again. There are open educational resources. They are available abundantly online. So where to find them? This is a LibGuide that we have prepared, and I'm sure that Foreman Christian College has also his own guide on where to find open educational resources by subject. I think that the link will be shared with you. This link, the link to this page, our page will be shared with you in the chat box. But also you can refer to your own librarians and the CTL Center for your own guide. But open educational resources are available online in some places by subject. Okay, so major open educational resources platform. There are major platforms for open educational resources, and many institutions in higher education have created their own open educational resources platform or libraries. They call them libraries. For example, the State University of New York, SUNY, has developed the Open SUNY. The platform, like many others created by institutions themselves, has made its library open to the public, but only accepts open educational resources submissions from its own faculty members. So whatever you'll find in Open Sunny is created by SUNY, okay? There's another platform, very common platform, and this is the largest platform, I would say, most comprehensive, it has most comprehensive free open educational resources. It's the OER Commons. It has partnered with numerous OER initiatives, including UNESCO, Maryland University, and SUNY, and offers collections in collaboration with groups like Carnegie Hall's Wayne Music Institute. The site also records a titles upload date and provider. So whenever you go there, you can check the source of the content which is provided and the date of upload. There are other free platforms also available like OpenStax, Wikibooks, Merlot, BC Open Textbooks. This is the British Columbia's platform, very rich platform, I would say. Open Course Library, Connections, and more. So these are all major OER platforms where you can find open educational resources for free to use under open licenses, of course. And I would say that there are likely millions of open educational resources and titles available across the internet, and finding the right one can be challenging. But this is why you have the support of your librarians, the subject specialists you have at the library, who are willing to help you find the most reliable and appropriate material for your topic and for your course. This is where I encourage you to go back to your library and to the librarians to help you in finding the most appropriate resource. So what kind of support can you get whenever you are using, adopting, or creating an open educational resource? The last question, this is our last question in the poll, so please, I would like to invite you to go again to the poll. And answer the last question. What kind of support do you think that you'll need to adopt or create open educational resources? Okay, let me go to question number 5. So I want you to think for a few minutes about the kind of support you will need if you want to adopt or create open educational resources. I would appreciate if you can be a little bit specific. This would help your institution provide you with the adequate support. So think a little bit about it, and if you can write specific answers, this would be very much appreciated. If you have an idea, a clear idea of what kind of support will you need, if any. Okay, so you can keep writing your answers, but for the sake of time, I will move back to the presentation with the last slide I have. So some of the support you can get is a one-on-one consultation with your subject librarians and with your instructional designers and the Center for Teaching and Learning. They are here to help you and finding the most appropriate resources and redesigning your course in a way in which you can adopt and add more open educational resources into your course. For us, we do library sessions and workshops. We do general library sessions on open educational resources in general, and then we do subject-specific workshops related to based on faculties or on disciplines, and we provide them with a training on how to find open educational resources for their specific topics. Some of the other options for faculty to redesign their courses is a sabbatical year. We don't do it, but some institutions do it, like giving some free time for the faculty member to help him redesign his course, give him the time to redesign his course. And some institutions, they have funding, special fund for those who adopt open educational resources in their courses, or for those who create open educational resources to use in their courses. So that's it for me. So if you have any questions, we still have a few minutes. I'll unmute myself at this point and waiting to hear from you. Any questions or comments? Please do share with us.
While all of you are thinking about your questions, I quickly want to launch the feedback polling from Zoom. So please respond to that. Mr. Lal, we have one question from Ms. Mahwish Patul. She works in the mass comm department. She's asking what kind of technical expertise one needs to develop OERs. Your mic is on mute. Your mic is on mute, Mr. Lal. Please unmute your mic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so you have to have expertise to develop your own open educational resource. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Is it for using open educational resources or for creating open educational resources?
For developing OERs.
Okay, so if you want to develop or create your own OER, a technical expertise, you just need to be able to create to open a Word document, for example, and really simple technical skills, like just to create digital content. Okay, so it could be as simple as creating a Word document, for example, where you can put the assignments, the textbooks. There are some platforms which some institutions subscribe to, and they would help you create more interactive content. But it could be just as using any text editor to create your content. Of course, as we have seen today, being able to find content online, if you are finding and reusing online content, you have to pay attention to licensing, under which license the content is shared. Any other questions?
Do we have any other questions? Right now in the chat box, everyone is telling you that they love the session and thanking you for the session. I cannot see any other question. We can wait for 2 to 3 more minutes.
Mhm. Any comments? It doesn't have to be a question, just a comment, or you want to add anything to what I've just spoke about? Okay. Great. So thank you so much. That's it for me. I leave it back now to Anish.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dalal, and thank you to everyone. I hope our library and the instructors will take advantage of this session. I will be sending you the recording and the presentation. Ms. Dalal, can you please share the presentation with me in the email? And thank you
Yes.
so much for your time. I know there's a time zone difference, but still we managed to take some time out for us. So we're really grateful to you. I'm going to end the session now. Take care, everyone.